At Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms, thank you very much for being a part and parcel of our broadcast this morning. Let's get into your economic review just before I introduce the gentlemen who are joining us this morning. All right. Now, the Kenya's roadmap towards regulating digital credit service providers is almost coming to life with the Central Bank of Kenya Amendment Bill 2021 currently in the public participation stage. According to the CBK, between 2016 and 2019, the usage of unregulated digital credit grew from 0.6% to 8.3%. Now, the fast rising subsector has, however, witnessed controversies with allegations of money laundering, high interest rates, invasion of privacy, cybersecurity, and consumer harassment. Through the amendment bill, CBK will provide licenses to digital lenders, determine their capital adequacy and minimum liquidity requirements, approve digital channels and business models, as well as suspend the licenses. If enacted, it will take effect immediately, and digital lenders will have a maximum of 6 months to register or be considered as illegal entities. All right, let's take a look at that conversation at the public participation stage where the CBK Governor, Dr. Patrick Njoroge, met some of the stakeholders in that specific industry.
What are the concerns that you're addressing? First is the very high indebtedness of borrowers. That is a key issue. The second one, which is very important, Chair, and is of concern to you especially, is the lack of consumer protection, the regular safeguards that are there in lending.
You're looking at the question of consumer protection. But I heard here yesterday one of them say, this is a business of the willing seller and a willing buyer. And so, if it is about protecting, then there should be protection both sides.
Mheshimiwa, the word that, the sentence that you repeated, willing buyer, willing seller, and that I think doesn't work because we have a responsibility to protect the public.
Pretty much, that is a conversation that went on when the Central Bank of Kenya Governor Dr. Patrick Njoroge appeared before that sitting. Not just before we cross again to our panel this morning, let's take a look at exactly where our average lending rates have been in the country, because then we have to look at that if we're going to talk about that regulation. You can see the entire of 2020 towards the end, we were talking about an average of around 12%. Now, probably that is about to change this year, because we do know the Finance Bill 2021 has a new entry that says that all loans, processing fees and commissions now and interest do actually attract as 20% excise duty rate. Now let's cross over and see where the CBR has been, and you will see that it has stuck at around 7% for the 9th consecutive time. Good, let's leave it there and introduce the panel that we have this morning. We are joined by Wahome Ngari, who's a financial literacy coach. Mr. Wahome, good morning, sir.
Good morning, great morning to be here. Thank you for having me.
Happy to have you around. We are also joined by Said Shah, who is a learned economic analyst. Said, good morning.
Morning, Simba, how are you?
Happy to have you around. Said, let me begin from your end this morning. The conversation of willing buyer, willing seller. That conversation came about yesterday. Is it possible that that approach could be assumed in the industry?
Thanks, Simba. I mean, if you look at it, is it really a situation where it's a playing field of willing buyer, willing seller? If you look at the people who access digital lending, I mean, this is a segment of the banking population that we call unbanked. So when we look at it from that perspective, I mean, do these borrowers have enough financial literacy? Do they understand the terms and conditions of the financial agreements that they enter into with these digital lenders?
Yes.
Do they understand the terms of the interest that they are being charged? So is it really a situation of willing buyer, willing seller? I personally do not think so. there has been, we have over 100 unregulated digital lenders in Kenya, operating in Kenya as we speak, and who operate, without any transparency in the pricing models, and enforce aggressive debt conditions. There's major privacy and use of personal data, which has become something very big in Kenya at the moment. Data protection is trending, if I can use that term. They misuse CRB, Bureau information. So if we look at the overall picture, is it really a situation of being willing? I personally don't think so. So it is a good time to regulate this space. It has been unregulated for a good number.
Very much. All right, let me bring in Mr. Gary Wahome this morning. Willing buyer, willing seller. I'm going to extend the same question to you. Is that possible? Because you could actually see the Central Bank of Kenya governor saying, no, that will not be possible at all. And when you're protecting a consumer, should you also talk about protection of the person with this product, in this sense, this digital lender, and how do you attain this balance?
Thank you for that. This concept of willing buyer, willing seller, if you look at the debt space, we have the regulated institutions, the banks, the microfinance, but we have a lot of unregulated people. We have the table banking, we have merry-go-round, we have all the chamas, and now we have the micro lenders. Because we are a capitalist state, we actually sometimes need a bigger brother. Just like Mr. Shah has said, the financial literacy levels are not high enough.
Yes.
A lot of people who are borrowing on these platforms cannot tell you the cost of credit, because some days they are given the interest rate per day, per week, per month. They can't tell what they are paying for. And for that reason, the lenders themselves are charging higher interest because they have no security. They have no security on their side. So to have the balance, I think that's why we need regulation. We cannot just leave it open. We need to protect the lenders, yes, but we also need to protect the borrower.
Pretty much. Sid, let me get you back to the conversation again, because one of those areas that we do expect this regulation to touch on is, number one, when these digital lenders are coming up with new products within the economy, they have to get that green light from the Central Bank of Kenya. They have to disclose their sources of money, and also we expect the Central Bank of Kenya to also come in and regulate their interest rates, because that has been a conversation that has been going on for quite some time now. Are we treating these digital lenders as banks indeed, Sid?
Well, number one thing is, you can't really say they're going to be regulated as banks. I mean, they won't have the same capital maintenance requirements. The thresholds will be significantly different than that of a bank. But if you look at the purpose of the bills, I mean, it's to regulate digital credit service providers, to ensure that there is fair and non-discriminatory marketplace for access to credit. So just from the purpose of the bill, you can see there's a lot that is not in. Capping interest rates, and as Mr. Mohammed has rightly pointed, these are digital tools don't require security when they lend to borrowers. However, that comes in with a high risk profile of default, and may justify charging higher interest rates than what a bank would charge. But in all seriousness, I mean, these are lenders who are charging 500-600% per annum with interest on the loans that runs to borrowers. So that is that needs to be taken. It's supposed to be brought back into line, and when all aggressive debt collection policies that they enforce needs to be tamed. I mean, you cannot go ahead if I've taken a loan, for example, and let's say Simba used you as a guarantor or provided your information in that application form. The digital lenders have no right all of a sudden cold call you non-stop, you to ensure that I don't default on my obligations under those terms and conditions. I mean, that's abuse of personal data. We have a very good data protection framework in place that should be abided by all these digital lenders. So when we look at all that, I mean, it is something that CBK are moving in the right direction to regulate. And I think we need to find a delicate balance to ensure innovation is not stifled, access to credit is also not hindered for the banked population. And how the central bank can also capitalize on this is increase consumer education, to empower customers with the knowledge to ensure they make the right decisions in accessing credit from all our various financial institutions in Kenya. And let's understand one thing. The detail on how this space will be regulated is going to be in the regulations. CBK will only publish, I think it's 3 months after the bill comes into force. So it's only once these regulations are published will we be able to better understand how the digital lenders will be impacted. And we also expect, I mean, from a legal perspective, we also expect CBK to place regulatory sandboxes, which means, it will allow digital lenders before CBK implements regulations, it will allow digital lenders to test their products, test the marketplace, and this is what innovation would not be stifled with. It will allow digital lenders to understand how regulation will operate. It will also allow transparency in the marketplace, which in turn, helps grow innovation in the financial industry.
Pretty much. Mr. Muhumengari, how do you properly regulate an industry without necessarily stifling that innovation that you do need? Because you can hear it saying, well, you're going to regulate, but regulate in a way that you're not going to curtail access to credit, which is very important and which is what you want to promote. But at the same time, you have to have your eyes on the specific industry. Is that a tough balancing act for a digital lender who's not necessarily a bank, because the Central Bank of Kenya has found it easier to regulate the banking industry?
Let's say the world is gone digital, the world is going increasingly digital in very, very many spaces. And so the regulators have to be more innovative in how to regulate. If you think about the Forex trading world, it's completely digital. And I think in the recent past, we've seen central banks trying to look for their space in there. If you go to the cryptocurrency world, it is increasingly digital. Again, there will be need for regulation. So yes, there has to be innovation in how we regulate without stifling the innovation, protecting the consumer. And there are simple things. Just like we said earlier, maybe the financial literacy levels for this borrower is a bit. But let's take parallels with medicine. When you go to a pharmacist or you go to a doctor, they understand medicine way beyond the consumer, but they take the trouble to explain some basics to you. And so this might be necessary at the point of lending. What if all interest rates were quoted on a percentage rate, for example? Because that's where the confusion comes in. You can't tell. If you told somebody they are going to pay 400%, would they not think about it before they engage? Because we have to look at how innovative can we be. We don't want to stifle innovation. We do not want to curtail credit, but we want to protect the consumer, and we also want to protect the lender. So there has to be a balance in there, and it is possible.
Pretty much. Gentlemen, I'd like us to move on to the next issue that we have for you this morning, because now Kenyans can breathe a sigh of relief for the next 1 month after the Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority announced unchanged fuel prices in their latest monthly review. EPRA retained the prices despite the landing cost of super petrol and diesel increasing by 4.83% and 3.69% respectively, as the landing cost for kerosene remained unchanged. A litre of petrol will now remain at 127 shillings and 14 cents, diesel for 107 shillings and 66 cents, while kerosene users will part with 97 shillings and 85 cents a litre. Now, the cost of fuel continues to mount pressure on the cost of living in the country. Kenyans who use cooking gas are already digging deeper into their pockets after the government introduced a 16% value-added tax on a liquefied petroleum gas. This morning, just before we go into that conversation, let's look at exactly where we are in terms of our levy, in terms of fuel levy, all the way from 2015 to 2020. And you can see it's the same song. The general trend is that we have been on a rising trend. And that levy is exactly what impacts heavily more than half of the price of a litre of any fuel in the country. Good. Let's cross over to Sid this morning. Sid, we should have an increase in terms of that cost, but then again, the government subsidy has kicked in. But then, Sid, I gotta tell you this or ask you this for anybody listening to you this morning. The government did pay oil suppliers or oil sellers in the country billions of money for the subsidy that started in April. Is this a subsidy if the government is going to reimburse oil sellers in the country? And if indeed it's a subsidy, does the government have free money to pay oil distributors or sellers in the country?
Thanks, Simba. So, I mean, yeah, prices have remained unchanged, and this is despite increases in the landing cost of fuel and the prevailing higher international crude prices.
Yes.
And as you've correctly mentioned, the holding price is attributable to the government-backed subsidy program, more famously dubbed as the Food Price Stabilization Fund. And this is something the government operationalized sometime early this year or late last year, and they set aside, I mean, National Treasury, according to my knowledge, set aside close to 1.4 billion shillings to operationalize this fuel price stabilization fund. So let's understand first how this works. What the fuel price, the effect of the subsidy is, it's evident on the supplier margin of oil marketing companies. So oil marketing companies have had to take a haircut on the margins that they would normally charge on fuel prices, and this has been evident. For example, in the month of May, margins came down to 8.82 shillings from 12.39 Kenyan shillings. And this drastic, that's almost good 20-25% that marketing companies have taken. So government is reimbursing them. I mean, this is the only reason why fuel have remained unresolved. Similar to which we have seen a fourth price hike in May. So in one way, it's a good thing the government is doing. I mean, we have many other countries in the world that implement this fuel price stabilization mechanism. For example, in Vietnam, we've been for a number of years. And the reason we need to control fuel prices is fuel has a direct impact on every single aspect of our economy. From commodities to manufacturing to transport, it increases the price of the most basic goods. So when fuel price stabilization mechanism kicks in, we have a situation where at least prices of other products in the economy are also kind of controlled, which leads to a situation where inflation is somewhat. So it's not a bad thing that the government has done. My only worry with it is there is no regulations in place to govern or operationalize this fuel price stabilization fund, which makes it illegal. The ES for oil for petroleum came out and said
Yes.
even if someone were to challenge that, I mean, whoever is challenging should go ahead and explain to 50 million Kenyans why, as a result of that challenge, fuel prices have gone up and why all of us are going to pay extra for every product that we consume. So it's a balancing act. Government is gone ahead and done something, but it's unlikely to be challenged. So as long as regulation comes in place, we have transparency around how these funds are being utilized and good formulas in place. This is something that will help.
Pretty much. Sid, I'm going to come back to you, and because we do have the diesel levy that is supposed to come in and cushion the diesel users in the country should that price skyrocket. Let me cross over to Wahome Ngari this morning. Yes, we do know the prices remain unchanged. Fine. But then the government is going to reimburse again all the oil sellers in the country because of this cushioning that they've gone into again. Is it necessary, Mr. Wahome Ngari, if indeed you are going to compensate in one way or another the oil sellers in the country because of this extra landed cost of fuel?
In the dynamics of fuel, there are just so many variables.
Yes.
At the international level, we have the suppliers, and I think there's a pool between Saudi and the United Arab Emirates, and we don't know whether that will result into a price war. And at the international level, the prices have been moving up. Now, at the local level, IPRA has helped us to understand what are the components of pricing. And we've seen what we pay for to the international people, what we pay for all the small levies around here. Now, just like Mr. Shah has said, fuel has a direct impact on the consumer and the economy in all levels. And if it is not managed well, it is going to fuel inflation. And if you fuel inflation, we're going to have more serious problems. So what's going to happen is that we will not pay at the individual level now, but we're going to pay through taxation over time, because government doesn't have another source of money. They're getting money from us, but not one-on-one. So we have to do the balancing act. We'll keep the inflation, the microeconomy stable, but over time we'll have to look for money to actually pay for that. So I think it's a good thing. Just like the only thing is we need to have better structures so that it is more clearer, because people in this country always wear different hats. It can be used for other purposes, but it's a good thing.
Pretty much. Sid, which therefore brings us to this very important question. We do have a diesel levy fund that is not even kicked in, because we do know we are paying 5 shillings for every litre that you fuel or you use in the economy. Sid, why has it not been operationalized? And you sort of read some malice into this fund, if indeed we are talking about high prices, that the government is using other funds other than the diesel levy to cushion the economy from?
Yes, but I mean, there is a diesel levy fund. Why it's not being used, I think, is a question rightly directed to the relevant ministry, the petroleum ministry. The reason behind that may be the lack of regulation, and this is something that's important. I mean, when government starts tapping into funds without having relevant regulation in place, there's a risk of mismanagement. As Mr. Wong correctly pointed, we don't know who's wearing which hat sometimes when government is using our funds. So it could be used to fund anything for all we know. So it's very important before you fully take advantage of these mechanisms and there are mechanisms in the right direction, but regulation is very important to ensure there's transparency, there's correct formula in place on how government can actually access this, in which situations it can access these funds. Because if I may put this, these are cash off reserves that government can use in times of emergencies, in times of situations like this, where they need to control prices from becoming the highest ever we have seen in the Kenya history. So, lack of regulation may be a reason why the diesel levy fund has not been utilized. But I'm not entirely sure why they've had to set aside from the supplementary budget an extra 1.4 billion to operationalize this utilization fund. And yeah, if the minister or ministry would have been prudent enough, they would have probably tapped into fund first before extra money being set aside to operationalize a new scheme.
Yes. Sid, just before we go on a break, 1 minute, if you may, should they extend this levy across the board, not just have a diesel levy, but just a fuel levy, so that now we can get this cushioning from these high international prices?
That means an increase in fuel prices, Simba. So I would tend to be against that. But maybe, we pay close to what, 50-60% from our fuel cost. 50-60% goes to tax.
Yes.
So out of that 50-60%, I'm pretty sure if they rework formula, 1% or 0.5% can be set aside to be financing a fund which can be used in situations like these to stabilize prices, fuel prices in the economy. But other than that, I would not be for a situation where I'm going to be paying an extra 5 shillings to somebody who we don't know how that fund will be managed. And that leads to an increase in overall prices, not only of fuel, but other commodities. So maybe they can tap into the 50% that's already there.
Pretty much. We take a short break. Once we come back, let's talk about what is going on in the University of Nairobi, but what is bound to happen in majority of the public universities in the country, as we ask the question, is it a case of declining financing from the national government, or just the reforms we have to adhere to from the International Monetary Fund? Because we do know, they did say that for us to get these latest monies that we were given, we had to get into proper reforms in public institutions in the country. And can we wiggle ourselves out of it once we come back?